Welcome to day 2 of the Bending Reality Retreat. Super excited about today. Today we go quantum, we go zero density. As Michael would say, it's going to be lit. So we will kick things off with a guided meditation with our director of coaching, the amazing Jen Schmidt. And yeah, Jen, take it away.
Good morning. I'm feeling everybody's excitement and all of the liveliness in the chat. Good morning, good afternoon. I know we have people not just across the US in 3 different time zones, but I know we have people in Europe as well. People joining us from Portugal, and I'm not sure how far we reached this morning, but multiple time zones. So good morning, good day. So happy to see everybody. I know a few people are still joining. Please do make sure that your mic is muted as you enter. And we are going to start. Oh, Panama and Spain. Amazing. I'm just feeling so excited and grateful for everybody this morning. So thank you for, again, showing up, and not just showing up, you know, for us. I'm not saying that from that perspective exclusively, but for showing up for yourself and showing up for the community, showing up for really for this time. The shifts we're making personally have that ripple effect that shift humanity. And that's really what this is all about. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here. We are going to start with a meditation. And I would ask everyone to just make sure that you are comfortable. Put down anything you may be holding, any notebooks or pens. Get yourself nice and cozy so we can really go as far as we can in this short meditation. And we're just going to begin with a nice, deep, relaxing breath. Bringing your awareness fully into this time and this place. Allowing yourself to let go of anything of the morning that may be holding your attention. And just really coming fully into your awareness. In this meditation, you will discover and embody your infinite self as you return your sense of identity home, journeying from your body, from your mind, from your limited concept of who you are, back to your eternal, infinite beingness. This is who you really are. The seat of infinite beingness from which all is manifest. If you haven't already done so, please close your eyes and take a few deep, full breaths in and out. Really allowing your body to relax more deeply with each breath, in and out. One more. And out. And as your eyes remain closed, focus your attention inward toward your heart center. Notice, observe there is a presence a spirit, an aliveness here. As your attention remains on this presence, see what you notice about it. It's peaceful. It is pure. It's complete. It's unchanging. It's never ending. In the silence surrounding this presence, allow yourself to simply observe. Visualize this presence as a ball of energy, a radiant mass of light eternally shining at the center of your soul. Being aware of this ball of light energy, see, sense, and feel that it's growing larger and larger and larger until it finally engulfs you so fully that you are at the very center of its eternal glow. From this center, feel the light radiating from you in all directions. Feel it encompassing your consciousness and your body. And growing to encompass your city, your country, further out encompassing your planet, your universe, and beyond. Like a projector focusing light on an empty screen of space, all existence is now projecting from the center of your soul, from the center of you. You are the source and expression of it all. Thinking of your present circumstances in all areas of your life, your relationships, your finances, your world. Know that it is you who projects it all. Notice how from this place, nothing is impossible. It is you who gives life to the entirety of existence. Notice how from this place, all appearances you encounter are simply your light projecting outward. As you remain eternally still, peaceful, and complete, your beingness is at the center of it all. Allowing yourself to fully sense your beingness. We're going to begin to bring this state fully into our bodies, fully into this time, this place, remaining connected to that infinite awareness, that seat of your beingness. I invite you to breathe in and out. Begin to move your fingers and your toes. Feel your body sitting. And knowing that you are fully connected to the seat of your beingness at all times. Bring this sense of your fullness fully into your body. Feeling your feet firmly beneath you. Feeling the solidness of the chair. Feeling the fluidity in your fingers as you move them and your breath as you breathe. I invite you to open your eyes, feeling refreshed and awakened and ready to journey even deeper today. May welcome you back. Always interesting to transition from a deep meditation back into this time and this place. So welcome everybody. I'd like to introduce Michael to get us started with session 3 of Bending Reality. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Good morning, Jen. Good morning to everybody here. We've got about 30 folks here. What a blessing it is. And I just want to express a ton of gratitude to our team, to Jen and to Dave, really cornerstones of all of the work that we do here at Reality Hacker. My work would in no way be as impactful as it is without all of the labor and love that they bring to this organization. We just have such a fantastic team of people that work here, and honestly, I'm ridiculously grateful. And honestly, from a high level, this company is the epitome of the manifestation journey. I feel like our ups and our downs have reflected so much the internal battles that we deal with as we journey through this human experience and attempt to make sense of how the consciousness that we are interfaces with that. So Jen and Dave, thank you so much for what you do for us. Big claps from me, and I know everybody else is clapping as well. I'm really excited to get started today because we've got our last couple of sessions, but we're getting there. We're taking you somewhere that honestly has been tremendously impactful for all of us. And you know, I got a question earlier over Instagram, and they were like, you know, I want to join your retreat, but I'm skeptical and blah, 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 blah. And you know what? I told her straight up, I get it. I don't blame you, because there's a plethora of teachings and teachers and people who think they're teachers teaching things they don't fully understand. I don't judge them, but it is what it is. And for many of us, there is what I call a spiritual prostitution that happens. There's a very specific circle of teachers and organizations that exist that many of us find ourselves kind of scrolling through and buying the products of. And one of the goals that we have here at Reality Hacker, A, is to take over the market share of the industry, but B, ultimately be your last resource, your last solution. You know, a lot of people come to us either at the very beginning of their journey, or they come to us when they've been on the journey for a while. They've read all the teachers, they've been into Abe, Neville, Eckhart Tolle, you know, Lester, all these different people, Sri Ramana. And they say, you know what? I have the intellectual understanding, and now I want to make it experiential. And if you read Neville, you notice that he says this quite a bit, especially in The Power of Awareness, that the real difference in your success with leveraging the law of assumption, as Neville might term it, comes when your understanding of this work goes from a mental observational understanding to an experienced union with it, right? He says we know a thing mentally by how we're able to observe it, to define it, to measure it, but we know a thing experientially or spiritually when we become it. And so this is our goal today, this is our goal yesterday, and this is our goal forever, to facilitate a significant aspect of your awakening. And so I'm very excited to get started today. We are rolling into session 3. I'm going to go ahead and open this up here. But man, day 1 and day 2 have been insane. I would love for you to share your thoughts on yesterday's sessions in the comments at your own convenience. We love to see it. We love to hear where you're at. And ultimately, man, we love to have this conversation, because the truth is, you really are the only ones that get to have this back and forth with me, right? Anybody that joins this retreat after today will not have the same opportunities that you have. And so I want to make sure to encourage you to get the most out of this. There is no question that is too dumb or ignorant or stupid, right? And I use those because those are often the words we use with ourselves. We feel stupid, we feel ignorant, we feel dumb, whatever. It doesn't matter. This is a space where you can bring all of your seemingly human self to the feet of the divinity that you are. So going into a review of session 1 and 2, yesterday we did a couple things, right? We talked about the 4 realms of reality. Realm 1 being source awareness, right? From which everything flows. Realm 2, right? Getting into consciousness. Realm 3, getting into the mind, the beginning of conscious separation, the beginning of compartmentalization and grid work, so to speak, right? Layer 4 being the body and the world. Realm 4, Mr. Smith. And, you know, really understanding that most of us, we try and recreate from realm 4 instead of working from realm 1, right? We discussed how realm 1 and 2 are the source and substance of all existence, including matter. Realm 4 has the most density. Realm 3 has a little less density. Realms 1 and 2 have 0 density. The higher the density, the more effort it requires to manifest change. Going back to what Neville teaches, the law of least action, being the most potent way to manifest due to the least effort of a movement in consciousness, right? The law of least effort is all about not physical effort, it's about movement in consciousness. And here's the thing, if you're finding yourself having a hard time fully immersing yourself in a new state of consciousness, the chance is you're addressing this from a dense realm, right? Either realm 3, realm 4, maybe even shades of realm 2, but we're not going to get into that today. It's going to be for our advanced private coaching. Okay. We've talked about ultimately realm 1 contains all potentiality of the universe, right? Desire, right? Who loves desire? The force or impulse that channels a potentiality into expression, right? We make the error of taking responsibility for the fulfillment of desire, which creates density. And we talked about this yesterday, right? Where does desire come from? It doesn't come from you. You cannot find a place in yourself where desire originates from. And honestly, the more I really think about that, the more I understand why Neville worded it, desire coming upon you. Because, I mean, if you take apart that sentence, he's literally saying that a desire is coming upon you. It's like, imagine like a hand on your shoulder, or Casper the Friendly Ghost showing up next to your ear, right? A desire coming upon you. It's not a desire coming from inside of you. It's a desire coming upon you. And most of us make that error. We take responsibility. We say, I need to figure out how to make this happen, forgetting that every desire comes with its own plan for fulfillment. And if it didn't have one, it wouldn't be desire. You know, the way you can almost look at desire, because here's the thing, when you get a desire, you're almost immediately put into the future, right? When a desire comes upon us, we're pretty much immediately thinking about ourselves already experiencing it. And we talked about this a little yesterday. You know, most people's problem is that they end up receiving a desire, and then they end up trying to rationalize it and condition it and form it and say who and what and where and when and why and how and what. And ultimately, if a desire comes upon you and it carries all the tones of its fulfillment, and when I even experience that, here's the thing, you wouldn't experience the desire, and the desire wouldn't be a desire if you weren't already perceiving yourself to be what you would be if you had the desire. Because literally in the moment that a desire comes upon you, you're imagining yourself experiencing it. So the biggest problem that most of us have is that we go through that temporarily experiencing, oh, you know, I love Taco Bell, right? Oh, I'd love this 6-figure company. I'd love this $10,000 increase in my salary. I'd love to get over this quarrel I have with a coworker, right? I'd love to make progress in my career. I'd love to make progress in my family. So who, what, where, when, how, why? And what I've learned here is that that is not my job. My job is not to figure out who, what, where, when, how, why. All of those things are already ordained. My job is to enjoy, right? Yesterday, Santorini with the fruit. Who remembers that, right? My job is to enjoy the sensations that show up, right? Because what happens when I'm enjoying those sensations? There's zero density, because there's no separation, because there's total union. And that, my friends, is an exemplary analogy of what the top state is. Ultimately, I think that for most of us, we're entering into the top state, albeit very momentarily and so inconsistently that we can't really even recognize what it is. And this is why we've set all this up this way. Because for you to understand how to access the top state, you don't need a set of frameworks. Okay, lay down in your favorite chair, put yourself on the verge of sleep and do that. Look, hypnosis is great and it works. I'm not sitting here digging on hypnosis, but most of that stuff is irrelevant if you don't know who you are. It's kind of like, and I want to bring the car example back into this. It's like, you know, the thing about society today is that for most of us, we don't have to know how to do things. It wasn't that way for a very long time, right? Up until maybe 150, 200 years ago, where we relying on a lot of the conveniences of others to do things for us, right? How many of us order from, you know, DoorDash and order things that we don't know how to make at home? There's nothing wrong with that, right? But in a lot of ways, we live in a society where we're not encouraged to be fully self-sufficient, right? Why? I can go get an Uber. I can go get a DoorDash. I can go, you know, I can go do whatever, right? There's all the conveniences of modern society in a lot of ways actually hinder us from becoming self-sufficient. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not, again, digging on it, but it's very interesting because what happens here is that I'm going to try and use all these techniques to manifest, but I don't know the fundamentals of manifestation. I don't know who I am in relation to the world around me. I don't know my fundamental identity. I don't know how to modify that in the face of contrast. I just know these high-level mental techniques, right? And it's like, okay, that's cool. Well, let's take it back 150 years and you're driving your Model 005 Ford that has a freaking 0.5 horsepower engine and there's no mechanics around you. The only way you're going to get that car going again is if you know how it works. You can maybe look at some technique that you learned in the newspaper that morning, but if you don't fundamentally understand how your car works, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage when anything potentially depreciating happens, right? And this is such a correlation to manifestation, because for most of us, this isn't about taking ownership. This is about getting understanding, right? This is not about taking responsibility for desire. This is about understanding the vehicle, the matrix that my mind-body complex is, and how that correlates to what happens. And I can promise you, having the high-level understanding of reality that you now have, understanding the four realms and how consciousness translates into matter, this is going to be such an anchor point for you moving forward. Because when you find yourself getting frustrated because your techniques aren't working, you can recognize that for the most part, your techniques are mental games and you just need to go back to your source. Because literally going back to your source, taking the protocol we're going to be giving you today, it's going to be the only thing you need to reset and recalibrate, right? That's what this work is. It's not about being in the wish fulfilled for a long amount of time. It's about programming your brain, your subconscious, your nervous system to return to the safety of infinity as much as you possibly can. People that are getting what they want consistently are living in the zero density state consistently. It's not about they're living there for 6 hours a day. It's that they're returning there as much as they can, right? We're not going to sit here and tell you that fear will not show up. It will. Especially if you're doing greater and greater things. Look, I know that I'm God. I know that I am the totality of the universe experiencing itself. It doesn't mean that when I take another step in my career or my business, I don't get nervous. And that's the truth, man. I still get nervous even before these calls. It is what it is. I don't judge myself for experiencing a human. But what I do is when I notice those emotions, I use them as opportunities to anchor myself back into a zero density state. Right? We want to get away from the idea that you're never going to have to face fear again, because it's such a weak place to live from. It is such a weak place to live from being afraid of fear. We don't want to be afraid of fear. We want to understand what it is to such a degree that when it shows its face, I have what some may call the emotional intelligence. Maybe I'll call it the spiritual intelligence, to understand there's not a lot of benefit to this. B, there's a biochemical response in my body unfolding that's going to result in an action that creates an outcome that confirms the self-concept that will repeat the cycle. And C, I have a responsibility to choose how I'm going to feel in any given moment. Because as we said yesterday, at the beginning of session 1 or 2, I don't really remember, when you feel good and you're intentionally in that zero density state, your body, your brain, your nervous system, it's going to look for complements. It's going to look for supplements, because that's the way we work. That's why people that are convinced of political viewpoints and religious viewpoints, for the most part, it's impossible to change. It's impossible to change, because why? What did William Blake say? The way it is the way it is for the person that says that's the way it is, right? So going back, we're getting started today, folks. Desire is not yours. You're simply a channel for the universe's expression of itself, or source consciousness, beingness, infinity, whatever word we want to use there. And ultimately, source knows your true desires, even if your mind does not, because ultimately your desires aren't yours. They're source experiencing itself as you. Dude, this is all a game of you, not you, but you wanting to experience yourself in bunches of forms and fashions. The more I go deeper into my journey, the more appreciative I become. Doesn't mean I honor or live from it, but the more appreciative I become of the spectrum of existence, right? The deeper I go in my journey, the more honor I have for all of the colors, for all of the vibrations, for all of the states, right? We're no longer living afraid of fear. We're not putting our head in the sand and saying, that doesn't exist. Because that's not empowered spirituality. That's not spirituality that gives you the highest quality of life and then transforms the world around you. And as we talked about yesterday, when you carry a service-driven manifestation goal or manifestation vision, the density is so little there. It's so minimal. You're naturally taken and connected with so many people that can bring you exactly what you want. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in my own life. Many different companies I've started, including this one, including my space company, right? As I told you guys yesterday, I've applied all of these principles. And my CTO is the guy that built all of the technology that Virgin Galactic is using right now to take people into space. I'm not qualified on paper, but you can bet your ass I am the totality of the universe experiencing itself, and so are you. And I can guarantee you that when you live from that conviction without faltering, which means, yeah, you have to get a little bit delusional from other people's ideas of what reality is. I saw a really interesting, I think somebody here shared it on Instagram this morning, a story from the Words Are Vibrations Instagram account. And the story was about, I'm not unrealistic. I just don't adhere to conjectures and convectures of a severely disbelieving and sick society. And I don't think the word was sick. I think it was another word. But, you know, it reminds me of that Jiddu Krishnamurti statement. It's no measure of health to adjust yourself to a profoundly sick society. And that's just the truth about the world that we live in. It is desperate for saving. And the real message here is that it doesn't need saving, because when you save yourself, you save the world. Literally, by the action of you stepping into this zero density state, taking full responsibility for your state of consciousness, fine tuning, right? Think about if you ever saw the Robin Williams movie, Flubber, right? How long did he spend tweaking the formulas? How long did he spend in his garage working on different aspects of this before he released it, right? That's what this is about. This is not about, dude, like, honestly, we could sit here and tell you how to subconsciously affect other people's minds, but why would you want to do that when you realize that just by changing your own state of consciousness, you're going to naturally change the dynamics of the interactions around you? And the truth is, man, why do so many people spend time wanting to change the minds of people that don't even want them? How much of our shitty beliefs are wrapped up in our desire to manifest people that expressively don't want us, or things that expressively don't? I can't tell you how many times I go on YouTube and I see people talking about, get your ex back. Why? It's your fucking ex. I'm sorry, but dude, move on. Live your life. Step into your power. Stop wanting what doesn't want you. Fucking want yourself. Care so much about your own state of consciousness that nobody else matters as much. And that might sound selfish, but that's the most selfless thing you can do, because you're never going to enter into your power couple relationship. You're never going to enter into your dream business. You're never going to enter into your legacy by playing small. And you're never going to move mountains with people who are hesitant to move them with you. So stop, because there are 7 billion humans experiencing themselves to be God here. And I can guarantee you haven't met all of them. I can guarantee you, if you work on yourself, if you sit in that, if you commit to this zero density state, they will come. And I can guarantee you it'll be a hell of a lot better than the people that you're sitting here trying to get back. And look, I get it. I get it. And the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I get it, because I wanted people that didn't want me for so long, and how small I was playing. How small I was playing. Michael woke up and chose loving violence. 100%. 100%, dude. Yeah, somebody said the kingdom of God is taken by force. Hell yeah. Only if it's coming from aversion, not true desire. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. But I don't concern myself with, the nuances of wanting people who expressively don't chase me, because that's just time I'm wasting that I could be building something, right? Like the amount of time that I have spent working on my vibration to try and attract specific people, I could just be spending living in full, unfiltered freedom, not giving an absolute single crap about who they are, where they are, why they are, because I matter more. And this is something that is just ingraining itself deeper and deeper and deeper in me. How much time I spend trying to manipulate my environment to create more happiness, when if I really just chose to enter that zero density state, my environment would manipulate on its own, right? That's why the techniques tend to be backwards, and they go backwards rather than forwards, because you're already a bending reality machine. You're already a manifesting machine. You've been doing this your entire life, right? So how much is our trying to rationalize and figure out the right thing and do this and do that to try and get this thing into our lives actually inadvertently depleting the potency of the vibration that we're carrying in the world, right? This is why I think people that are in the zero density state manifest so well and so quickly, because the truth is there are not many things that carry heavy density, right? They have come to create certain conclusions about themselves that the density becomes less and less and less over time. And I think what I realize is that, yes, we have obligations to jobs, relationships, careers, and this sort of thing. What I'm also realizing is that if any of those things begin to cost me, myself, they're not necessarily most likely where I should be functioning and where I should be envisioning. And right, that the solution to that is going back to the zero density state. And so ultimately, going back to where we were, you get so tired fucking with techniques. Absolutely. You're 100% right. Right. And so we make the error for taking responsibility for the fulfillment of desire, which creates density, right? And we take responsibility when we start rationalizing, well, I need to do this to get it here quicker. I need to do this to get it here quicker. I need to do this to get it here quicker. No, the fuck you don't. You're already one with it. God is not so far as to even be near, because nearness implies separation. The very act of trying to figure out how something will come to pass is literally separating yourself from it. You're creating a divergence in the force, right? You're creating a divergence in the flow here. We want to have that pure high vibrational disc, right? And as Rebecca said, enjoying the journey. We talked about this yesterday, right? So many people get caught up in what they want, the destination, the end. And what I've learned is that when I choose to focus on the journey and the nuances of the journey, right? Like making sure I'm returning to zero density state as much as possible, the goals get accomplished on their own. The desires come to pass on their own. Why? Because I'm not taking responsibility for them. I'm focusing on myself. And what a blessing it is to be able to focus on myself, huh? Like, what an amazing opportunity I get to find fullness in myself, unconditional fullness, and experience the world around me. Somebody yesterday talked about when you really, their experience of enlightenment being awe and childlikeness. And I'll tell you what, I feel like in the most, connected moments, when I'm feeling the most connected, the deepest, those are the tonalities. It's awe, right? It's that childlike wonder. It's the childlike faith, the faith that Jesus says gets you into the kingdom of heaven. And if you notice, right, Jesus doesn't say, well, being an accountant and financial advisor with the side of being a lawyer and knowing the 50 credentials of the Magna Carta and the 15 first lines of the Declaration of Independence gets you into the kingdom of heaven. He said, unless you've got the faith of a child, dog, you ain't going to get in, homie. And how true is it? How true is it? Our literal need to rationalize and organize and compartmentalize keeps us out of the substance of the kingdom of heaven. Because what's the substance of the kingdom? Abundance, joy, satisfaction, contentment, excitement, dopeness, stokage. Shout out to Chad Goes Deep. Right? But as long as we're sitting here, oh, dude, like, what if this was as simple as telling you to enjoy your freaking life? What if this was as simple as telling you, hey, you know what? You're so focused on these things that you think you need. You've never actually cultivated a space of safety inside of yourself where you can enjoy your life without needing to think about the next thing that you need to do. And because of that, you're never really going to get where you want to go, because that sense of need perpetuates itself literally by the merit of its own existence. Exactly, dude. You know, and I used to hate the statement, God helps those who help themselves. I hated it, but I've realized, right, from a non-dual perspective, to the one who has, more is given. To the one who has not, more is taken away. Here's the thing. That's not a reference to external possessions. That's not a reference to your Fidelity 401k. Okay. That's not a reference to your real estate portfolio. That's a reference to the energy, the vibration that you are carrying internally. To the one who has internally, more is given. And to the one who has not, more is taken away. Because as a person believes in their heart, so they become. Everybody following along so far? It's turning out to feel like church a little bit, huh? So what we want to do is we want to deconstruct the zero density state, okay? I've got a couple drinks here, support my blood flow. The master consciousness. Ultimately, the consciousness of a perfected yogi is effortlessly identified, not with a narrow body, but with the universal structure. He who knows himself as the omnipresent spirit is subject no longer to the rigidities of a body in time and space. The key takeaway here is understanding that when you identify with your infinite and omnipresent source nature, that universal structure, you're able to bend time and space. And when we use this concept, when we're talking about this, again, I would probably put in between the words to and bend consciously in parentheses, because like we've said, you're a bending reality machine. Surprise, spoiler alert, you're already everything you could ever want to be. Congratulations. What we're doing here is we want to help you understand how that's fundamentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally already true, right? And so simply by carrying around and identifying with infinite space inside of your consciousness. And when we say inside of your consciousness, we say inside of the totality of the energy you are holding in your body, right? When you're walking around, when you're walking inside to Sephora to go get your makeup, you know exactly what kind of state you're in. When you're walking into Red Robin to go get yourself a hamburger, you know what state you're in. When you're getting out to go to H&R Block in your neighborhood, you know what kind of state you're in. You know what vibration you're carrying in your body. And the key here is to allow the tension to decrease. I mean, because here's the thing, you could probably find what we're teaching you deep in literature across multiple other teachers, including those of which we've brought up here so far. But the goal here is to make it so crystal clear that you have no choice but to understand it. So when we're identifying with infinite and omnipresent source nature, we're identifying with an energy inside of ourselves that is not entertaining limitation. Does that make sense? We're walking around with an essence of limitlessness. And I can guarantee you, you know what I'm talking about. And session 4, we're going to bring you to the feet of God with this technology activation. And we're going to really, the whole goal for the rest of today, and then the next 6 weeks, which you get included with your purchase here, is to acclimate you to the zero density state. Because as we talked about yesterday, the more you feel it, the more memory, the more space your body creates for the memory of it, right? And the cool thing about the memory here is that memory is past appearing real. Memory is past experiences appearing real. So if I can ingrain memory, like this is why understanding the structure becomes the life hack. Because if I can understand how to actually ingrain new memory, if I can consciously ingrain new memory, and I know that the body functions off of memory, and memory is always used in every day-to-day process in an attempt to help us make a decision, and I ingrain my fundamental function of memory to take me back to a zero density state, how would I not be equipped to conquer absolutely anything. The masters who are able to materialize and dematerialize their bodies or any other object and to move with the velocity of light and to utilize the creative light rays and bringing into instant visibility any physical manifestation have fulfilled the necessary Einsteinian condition. Their mass is infinite. So ultimately, you look at the speed of light and the speed of light in a vacuum, and you begin talking about how mass density contributes to speeds, gravity, strength, and all that sort of thing. You know, I don't want to get into the logistics of bringing bread into thin air out of nowhere, of multiplying bread and fish, because this is not one of those types of retreats, right? We could talk about that. Maybe we'll have an ancillary program somewhere down the line to talk about, you know, manifesting like instantaneous healing and all that kind of stuff. What we really want to emphasize here ultimately is that the miracles that seem to take place, defying laws of space and time, occur when we are identified with our infinite nature. I mean, and this really comes down to things being as simple as you think of somebody and they call you, right? You think of somebody, they call you, or you think of something and then you get an email, that sort of thing. A lot of the times that process is the same exact process that's going on here, right? The only difference is you're very unconscious of the actual process occurring. But that whole sense of telepathy of the right time, the right place, the right moment. I just want to, from a practical perspective, folks, how could I ever have, because we all want, who here wants right time, right place, you know, right everything moments, right? We all do. How could, on a practical level, how could we ever create those consistently while living in a state of lack or while living outside of our zero density state? If everything that we are conscious of on a dominant level outpictures itself, how can living outside of my zero density state help me create consistent right time, right place, right everything moments? It can't. And for many of us early on in our journey, there is a sense of need for those right time, right place, right everything moments. I know this because, right, I've been there. And I know that, right, whether I was homeless and sleeping under bridges or whether I was sleeping in my 7,000 square foot mansion, nothing changed. Because that's the thing, and I know many people, and I was at one point myself, this person who has all the materialistic things in ultimately is poorer than a homeless person. Because the internal world is jumbled and garbled. And the truth is, man, you really want to make sure you get this down now, because you don't want to be one of those people that manifests everything that you want because you thought it was what you want. And then you have a midlife crisis again, maybe realizing that you tried to manifest a bunch of stuff that was ultimately not really valuable to you. Because the truth is, humans are very well equipped to do very well with nothing. And this is something that, you know, I really try and enforce in the lives of myself and those around me, is that if you can't be content with nothing, you won't be content with everything. And this is where a lot of people try and go from, I entered the manifestation space because I realize I maybe don't have any skills, or I don't have anything that's bringing me joy and fulfillment in my life, or, you know, I need to do something different about my circumstances. And they try and go from that to trying to get everything. And where I like to encourage people to go is from that to being content with nothing, and then moving on into the expansion, or at least creating less of a sense of enmity with that sense of nothing, right? And this is why earlier in the week, I had you write down how you were grateful for those opportunities of misalignment, right? Because what happens here is my job with the negative things in my body is to become less enemous of them, right? Become less polarized towards them. Sure, they can be, right, as Neville says, right, sickness can be a catalyst for getting well, but I can't hate myself and create a life that I love at the same time. Does that make sense? I can't hate the parts of myself that I recognize are contributing to my really crappy life cycles. I have to be able to find at least a neutral appreciation for these things that I have allowed to hold me back, so that as I move into expansion, they're not gnawing at my soul. And I know we're going a little off track here with what's on the screen, but we're letting it happen. This is a message that somebody here is needing. There is truly no benefit to completely detaching your sense of identity and worth from everything in the world around you. There's truly no benefit to keeping that attachment in place. There is all the benefit in letting go of it and identifying with your source. I mean, think about this too, right? Think about, let's just say you want to become really rich and you want to handle a lot of money and you want to make a lot of investments. It's like if you have a problem spending $100 on yourself or $1,000 on yourself, on your well-being, on your future, right? On bettering yourself, on investing in yourself, how the heck could you ever spend hundreds of millions of dollars on startups? How could you invest billions of dollars in tech companies, right? We talk about wanting to be really, really rich, but when it comes to the lower levels, we find that we're afraid to spend money on ourselves. We're afraid to invest in ourselves. And I'm not saying that's true about anybody here, but I know that these are very clear revelations of why we're not functioning at that level yet. We have to become totally transparent with where we are now, with non-judgment. And from there, it's so much easier to not only move into the zero density state, right? Because how many of you have done techniques, you hypnotize yourself, whatever, and in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, but fuck, man, like, how do I know that this is working? Like, how do I, because a lot of that doubt is actually stemming from existing fragmentation that exists in your body. Because all that inner voice is, here's the thing, your inner voice is just an echo of your fundamental self-concepts. 99% of the time, the inner voice that you have is a fundamental echo of your self-concepts. This is why when your self-concepts change, your inner voice changes. It's kind of like your self-concepts are a loudspeaker, right? And they're coming through, they're echoing in the form of that inner voice, right? They're going through the loudspeaker, and that inner voice is the audio coming from that loudspeaker, right? And as you change what's behind that loudspeaker, the substance that is ultimately forming the sound that's coming out of that loudspeaker, you're going to change actually what comes out of the loudspeaker, right? And the reason I feel like it's so necessary to go into this is because too many people get way obsessed with just trying to get a bunch of shit. And it's like, dude, I'll tell you this, even after you get everything you want, you'll still find that there's shit for you to work on. And maybe that's a blessing in disguise. And here's the thing, I'm not here to discourage you from getting stuff. I love stuff, right? I have such an appreciation for wealth and luxury, right? But let's acquire wealth in the healthiest way possible. Let's build wealth in the most mindful way possible, right? Let me build in such a way that I am at the least amount of risk of returning back to where I was, right? Doesn't mean you need to be over analytical about the process, but we want to make sure that as we're building the foundation for our new house, that the substance, that the order, that the layering, it all works in tandem, that there aren't bricks that are skipped over, that there aren't gaping holes. Because when the storm comes, if your house isn't built right, if your foundation isn't strong, your house blows away. There you go. There you go. Good stuff. A yogi who through perfect meditation has merged his consciousness with the creator perceives the cosmical essence as light. To him, there is no difference between the light rays composing water and the light rays composing land. Ultimately, when you're identified with source, you perceive that all matter is composed of liquid light consciousness, cosmic consciousness. In other words, when you're identified with source, you really begin to see the underlying essence of all things as yourself, right? when I had my kind of first awakening experience in Missouri, you know, that was all that I felt. And really for almost about a week straight, you know, I had just gotten let out of a jail in California, Missouri, and I was walking down the street, and that's when my first awakening experience happened. And I saw everything melted away, and I saw my face and my essence, my spirit in the bricks and the concrete and the buildings around me and the windows, in the trees that were 5 miles away that I could see in the distance. And I felt that ultimately everything was very movable, despite it seeming to be concrete and solid. And ultimately what was moving everything was me, but it wasn't me. It was the God I had been pursuing for 5 years prior in over 25 different states and a lot of different denominations. And ultimately what happens is the zero density state, we have really coined and idealized for you to get to that place, right? When you really stop experiencing reality as something separate from yourself, but experience it as something that this body that is you, that is also everything else, is moving, interconnected with, all of a sudden the fragility turns into flexibility. And the flexibility makes consciously bending reality much easier. What you do not know is that the entire universe is your body, and you need not be afraid of it. You may say you have two bodies, the personal and universal. The personal comes and goes. The universal is always with you. The entire creation is your universal body. And I love this statement from Sri Nisargadatta, because most of the time he's very blunt. He's very, you're not real, so why are you complaining? And I love how he makes a reference here to the personal and the universal body, because in some sense, I have to recognize this seeming individuality here, right? I can't ignore it. I can't ignore the fact that if I go for a day without food, there's grumbling going on inside of this experience, right? Like, we can play with logistics later. The whole goal here ultimately is understanding that in spite of my seeming individuality, consciousness, which is the substance of everything, which gives everything its intelligence, its awareness, its life. So in other words, God is who you really are. And the entirety of creation is your body. So what happens, just sit here for a second. And I really want you to just feel your body expand, and maybe your skin pops off, who knows, right? But really expand and absorb the solar system. Leave the earth for a second, expand past the moon, feel all these things inside of you, right? Expand past Venus and Mars, Jupiter, the asteroid belt, really feeling yourself absorb all of these objects. How crazy does that get, right? You really begin to feel yourself as the substance of all things, because it's the truth. It is literally the truth. And all you're doing is taking yourself into an experience of your true being. And that's why I love the meditation that we do before every session. You know, Jen takes you from your seat to your city, to your country, to your planet, to your universe, right? That sense of expansion, bodily expansion, it really gets us feeling full and infinite. And that's really what we want to do here. Ultimately, the real self is the infinite I. That I is perfection, and it is eternal. It has no origin and it has no end. Ultimately, your true source nature is infinite. And we really keep on bringing this home because it's ridiculously important. But ultimately, your infinite nature is eternal and perfect. It is the feeling of I, or I am, right? Mainly, honestly, I would say more close to the feeling of I. Before you attach a definition, a self-definition to I, there is a sense, there is a spaciousness that arises when you, like, if you just sit here, forget repeating I am, sit here and repeat I for a little bit, see what really begins to happen. But ultimately, that I, existing independently of any self-definition, exists in a very similar state as what we would call perfection. Perfection being a sense of completion, of wholeness, of fullness, of okayness, of adequacy. Perfection isn't a measure of how things are organized. It's a measure of how I'm relating to my true self. Honestly. Because the truth is, because your true self is perfect, even when you perceive order and chaos as different subjects, perfection is still existing inside of it all. And that's frustrating, because when we're upset and we're complaining and we think that this thing is happening and we want to say, well, this isn't, perfect and it needs to be perfect. And I have all these blah, 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 blah. It's still perfect. And ironically, going back to the fact that you are a bending reality machine, you won't experience that perfection until you adhere to it. And most people will spend their time pursuing techniques and states that they think equals perfection. But the truth is, as you've probably noticed, the more you begin to love yourself, the easier it is to take care of yourself. If you're in a place of self-hatred, it's really hard it's heavy to take care of yourself, right? It's just not fun, right? But the way it is the way it is for the person that says that's the way it is. So as I enter more into that zero density state, I begin to take on more of those habits. I begin to take care of myself more. I begin to take care of the people around me better. I begin to solve problems better. I begin to navigate situations with a higher quality. In other words, there's no real imperfection that you could adhere to that would ever be truly justified in your life. The only justification, the only objective justification for a struggle that you have is the justification that you give it. But because you are source consciousness experiencing itself subjectively, you have the opportunity to choose. You have the opportunity to assign meaning. And because you have the opportunity to assign meaning, you have the opportunity to interpret and experience any situation in any given way. And the truth is, man, when you really start to understand your fundamental structure, you don't need a lot of miracles. We need miracles because we're in perpetual states of desperation. But once you really understand yourself and you start working with your consciousness well, miracles, which are really just the things that I want the most coming to pass, it's a regular thing. It's a regular thing. And on a complete side note, we talked about a song called Rubber Band Man yesterday, and the version I was thinking of was actually by T.I., some ATL rap. I just thought that I had to bring that up for clarity. So as long as you consider yourself to be the body, you see the world as external and the imperfections appear to you. God is perfection. His work is also perfection, but you see it as imperfection because of your wrong identification. Damn. Yeah, that's the truth. If you saw yourself as whole, would you see anything else as imperfect? If you saw everything else as the substance of reality, would you see it as imperfect? And here's the thing, okay? Just because you see something as fundamentally perfect doesn't mean that you're not going to do anything to affect the situation. Okay, I think it's really important to understand here that coming to this place of perfection does not mean that we are resorting to a place of inaction. In fact, I would venture to say that if we are seeing things as perfect, even if they are technically in somebody else's eyes not perfect, our state of consciousness and the laws of the universe dictate as such, we would ultimately turn whatever seeming imperfection into perfection. And that's the real interesting thing here, right? Because we want to get really to the bottom line with ourselves in saying, how long am I going to truly justify sitting outside of the zero density state? How long am I going to give myself the opportunity to entertain lies that are the result of wrong identification? Like I said, if you take the activation today and you run with it for the next 6 months, you'll make more progress in your manifesting journey than you have in the last 2 years, unless you've been here at Reality Hacker, because obviously we're helping people do things at the speed of light. Just kidding. Not really. We actually do. But the reason we develop this way is because, yeah, the techniques, the methods, the frameworks, the formulas, they are all pathways to. They are not iterations from, right? It's all pathways to, not iterations from. And it's like, how much easier will it be when I know I don't have to walk myself into or manipulate myself into some specific state of consciousness because my individuality has been fragmented and I am feeling incapable. See, that's the thing. The more you really understand this and integrate this, the less complex it's even going to become. Because again, as your body creates the memory for that space of infinity, and you make a conscious effort to return to that memory, the memory will become more expansive until, as Neville calls, it will crowd all other ideas out of your consciousness. And when it crowds all other ideas out of your consciousness, it's game time, baby. When you're identified with your human body, you experience sense limitation, right? You experience imperfection. Source is perfect, limitless, and when you identify with source, you see and express perfection. And I really want to stress again that perfection is not correlated to organization of form. I am not going to sit here and say that maybe somebody that has 20/40 eyesight is imperfect. Because even when it comes, here's the thing, man, even when it comes to trying to create what the perfect body is, what the perfect, if you have all your ligaments and your brain's intact and you didn't grow up with alcoholic parents, and all, like even the standard of perfection that we claim here as humans is literally subjective, because the standard of perfection or optimal body performance here on Earth literally only applies here on Earth. On Mars, it would be completely different. On Mars, the gravity is actually, I think, 5 to 7 times less. So the whole standard of body perfection on Mars is going to be completely different. Oh yeah, and when we start living on the moon, there's not already a breakaway civilization there. The same thing is going to happen. The makeup companies are going to go crazy because genetics, anatomy, they're all subjective to the environment that they live in. So even your attempt to say, well, you need this eyesight and you need this and you need this to be perfect, I'm going to say, dude, just stop. Just stop. Are you done? Are you done justifying your imperfection? Are you done giving yourself shit for not being enough? Like, are you done? Are you done? It doesn't matter if you don't have perfect eyesight. How is that stopping you? It doesn't matter if you don't have a leg. How is that stopping you from entering this space in your body? It doesn't matter how you grew up. It doesn't matter what you went through. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter what you have or haven't done. There's not really a difference between the person who makes billions of dollars and the person who has nothing. Sure, you might say, well, they've got money in their bank account. Who gives a fuck? Honestly, why do you care so much about things that mean so little? Once you get over the need to, and the reason I think I get so in depth about this is because this was me for a very long time, right? Like, especially coming out of Christianity, coming into the awareness of my union with what I once called God, that I thought was separate from me. So many things going on in the back of my head, right? Well, it says even in the last days, the elect will fall away. And are you sure this is what repentance means? And how do you know you're not just believing something that's not real? And blah, 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 blah. And it's like, the reason those questions kept on coming up was because that's still where a large part of my self-identity was. And as I moved more of my self-identity into this zero density state, understanding that there is no separation between myself and God, that Jesus was actually just telling everybody that, and that there really is no mediator between man and divinity, or woman and divinity. Those echoes, they go away, they go away, they go away. Because the truth is, you're trying to manifest something and you're sitting there in the back of your mind saying, well, what if I'm not doing it right? Well, what if I'm not doing it the best way? Well, what if I could be doing it better? It's like, that sort of dialogue is only going to hinder you. It's only going to bring you down. It's only going to take you out of the zero density state. There's a reason that becoming like a child is what enters into the kingdom of heaven. If any of you have, kids, 5-year-old, 10-year-old, if you've ever had a 5-year-old, mainly more 5 than 10, because 10, they start to get rational. 11-year-olds learning about black holes at this point. But the 5-year-old, he says, I can do this. Well, why can you do that, dude? Well, because I can. Who says so? I do. Oh, right. Even though you don't maybe not let them do it, that straight nonchalant declaration, they have no clue. They have no clue. And so they live with that boldness. And in his body, he genuinely believes it. And most of the time he gets what he wants. Right? That's where we really want to go here. But most of us, we allow everything to cloud our judgment, cloud our brain, cloud our mind, cloud our consciousness. Well, I got to do this. 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 Well, here's the thing. Well, thinking about how much you need to do this actually get you any real progress towards doing this? No. There you go, Doug. Killing it. The individual fragments without the context of the whole, blah, 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 blah. Love it, dude. I freaking love it, man. Doug has been sending some fire messages to me lately. All right. So ultimately, man moves in a world that is nothing more or less than his consciousness objectified. Neville, right? The universe is always reflecting the contents of your consciousness. There is no exception to this law. And to that point, yes, going back to the earlier statement about somebody not wanting you can very much be a reflection of you not wanting yourself, 110%. But as you also mentioned, Vanessa, that usually comes down to when you are personally in aversive states rather than open states. And I appreciate you making that clarification. So ultimately here, we're going to continue to dive in this way. Where I am, everything must be perfect. If they are blind, they cannot remain blind. If they are dumb, they cannot remain dumb. If they are lame, they cannot remain lame. No matter what they are, they must be perfect in the presence of the divine body that is perfect, and everything is made perfect, right? So again, and I really love what Doug said here about perfection being really more often than not a standard according to a predefined ideal. And ultimately, if I can understand that beyond a sense of ideals, beyond the sense of meaning, because what are ideals except for meaning assigned to very specific situations? Beyond all of that, there is true perfection that exists unconditionally and independently of any physical phenomena. And that's really where I want to go. The more that this is the best my life has been ever, the more that this is the best my life has been. The more that my life is perfect, the more that my life is perfect. But until my life is perfect, it won't be perfect. And this is why we use the statement, everything is working out for you, or everything is working out on its own, is because it very consciously diffuses the aversion about things going wrong or right. Everything is working out on its own is a stepping stone to everything is perfect. I would say that everything is perfect is the final evolution of everything is working out on its own. Because the truth is everything is already worked out. And you are walking into that. And that's how we want to approach this, right? We want to continue to rationalize the world from this place of zero density as much as we possibly can. There really is no intrinsic benefit to not looking at ourselves in the world from this place, from this state. So the key takeaway here is when you are in your divine body, when you're identified with source, perfection must manifest because source is perfect and you are holding perfection in consciousness, right? When you're in your divine body, when you are identified as infinity, perfection manifests because source is perfect. And when we say perfection manifests, we say things fall into place, things work out, things come together, right place, right time, right everything, right? All of this comes down to the state of consciousness that we are entering into, okay? And I want you to prepare here in about 10 minutes. We're going to do a group exercise and then come back and then round out session 3. But be prepared, take your notes out if you don't have them out already. We're going to be doing some fun stuff here. So when you're in your divine body, perfection must manifest because source is perfect and you're holding perfection in consciousness. In other words, folks, you keep on seeing the same thing repeated back to us again. We cannot possibly hold imperfection and create more of what we want, right? We cannot see fragmentation. As much as we think we're justified in seeing our fragmentation, seeing the fragmentation only leads to seeing more fragmentation. And so, as we bring ourselves back to the zero density state, and we rationalize the world from that place, and really what's interesting about the rationality of the world from that place is that it naturally happens, right? You don't have to force yourself to look at the world in a certain way. As you truly immerse your nervous system in the zero density state, you will look at the world in that light. Think about, right? I mean, and honestly, we can use a very specific example, meditation, right? Think about how your perception maybe before this morning or yesterday, either of the two sessions, the attitude you came in with, and ultimately how shifting your state completely transformed, what was happening inside of your body. And that's something that honestly could not be given enough attention. You have full power here to completely modify how you're looking at yourself, how you're looking at the world. You have full power to move up and down the spectrum of consciousness. I can only give what I am. I have no other gift to give. If I want the world to be perfect, and who does not, I have failed only because I did not know that I could never see it perfect until I myself become perfect. If I am not perfect, I cannot see perfection, but the day that I become it, I beautify my world because I see it through my own eyes. Unto the pure, all things are pure. And I love that he references Titus in here, because that whole portion of scripture is all about deciding whether you should eat fish, whether you should eat meat, whether you should not eat fish, whether you should not eat meat. But at the end of the day, it really does not matter, because if you believe in the purity of what you're doing, that purity shows up. If you believe in the perfection of what you're doing and who you are, that perfection shows up. It doesn't really matter. And honestly, I think this is the biggest case for anomalies in human existence, right? For every pattern that we say is objectively true, there are anomalies that prove it wrong, right? For every person that we say, died from eating too much red meat and drinking too much whiskey, there's somebody that's lived to be 115 in good health that's eaten nothing but bacon and drank whiskey for the last 60 years, right? So much of this is not about external metrics and standards. I'm not going to sit here and say, dude, go eat Little Debbie's all day, right? Personally, I don't think that's the best decision. But seeing that perfection, and truthfully, I think if you really lived from this perfect state, you probably wouldn't do that anyways. There's a regulation that comes, right? There's a balance. When we sit into perfection, we sit into balance. I think that's what I notice the most, right? As I move into states of perfection, it's not that I have avoided or escaped the spectrum of experience. It's that my experience in that spectrum is no longer controlled or dictated by where I am on that spectrum. Because again, we don't want to eliminate the spectrum. I'm not trying to eliminate the spectrum. I don't anticipate fear or anxiety not happening ever again. I think that's foolish. I do anticipate my ability to rationalize anxiety and fear for what they really are, ultimately lack, in every moment when they come up, and being able to recalibrate my consciousness to navigate said situation in such a way that I create a benefit for myself and ideally those around me, right? This is empowering spirituality. And so that's the reality of looking at things through that lens of perfection, right? Think about if somebody's approaching you, and maybe they're more animus and enmitous towards you, right? Maybe they're a little angry, maybe they're a little frustrated, and you're living from this truly perfect state. Maybe you might not be completely passive, but just try and think for a second how you'd rationalize a situation. You're not in physical danger or anything, right? But more of a contrast-driven situation. If you're truly living from this state of perfection, just for a second, think about how you would navigate a more contrast-driven situation, right? Just your ability to navigate is so big, because for most of us, when it comes to manifesting, because and I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but because we're living with this standard of I need to do X, Y, and Z in order to manifest, That's where a lot of the condemnation for not doing the right technique comes into play. The reason we condemn ourselves for not doing the right technique is because ultimately we're living from a place of separation, which is definitely not a place of perfection. And because of that, there's this uphill battle that creates this to and fro. When I'm up, I'm up. When I'm down, I'm down. And we don't need to call it bipolar. We don't need to label it as a disorder. And I think that's really dumb, honestly. I think a lot of people today are labeling themselves with disorders because it gives them a sense of identity. And I'll be honest with you, I was labeled with 7 at age 6. I was labeled with PTSD, ADD, ADHD, OCD, RAD, ODD. I had a ton. And there's nothing enjoyable about labeling myself with a bunch of disorders. But I think for a lot of us, we get attention and we get identity from it. It makes us feel like there's something about us that is fundamentally flawed. And truthfully, it's just a victimization consciousness that keeps many people stuck. I'm not denying, that these things exist. I'm not denying that in trauma victims, there is a tendency to swing from one end of the emotional spectrum to the other. But I think for the most part, the labels that we put on ourselves are more detrimental than they are helpful if those labels are not perfection. And I'll tell you what, I have seen more healing in all of those things. Like I had doctors that used to tell me when I was a kid that if I didn't take the medication I was prescribed, I would kill somebody in 3 days, right? And it's been over 12 years since I've taken a medication at this point, and it's like, not everybody has the objective license on life. And as long as you're agreeing with other people's imperfect ideas about you, you will suffocate yourself with the lack of freedom that exists, right? Because if you have this, you have to do that. If you have this, you have to do that. If you have this, you have to do that. And again, right, we're not denying the power of therapy and support and all those kinds of things here. But what we're really trying to understand, here's the thing, is there anything in your life that you are using? Are there any labels that you're using as a justification, right? And this is what I want to do for a second. I want to spend about 5 minutes or so, and I want to just take some time. I'm going to share some music here, and I want you to write down for a second. I want you to explore and see if there's anything that you are using, any labels, any explanations, any justifications that you are using to allow yourself to avoid an identification of perfection. That is my question for you. 5 minutes approximately, go. All right. Good stuff. If you didn't get enough written down, that's totally okay. The reason we wanted to do this ultimately is for personal accountability. I think that, the most powerful tool that you have here is your own accountability to yourself, right? Only you have the ability to assign meaning and take it away. And so what I want to do with whatever you wrote down today is ultimately, I want you to create a circle around it on your piece of paper. I want you to draw a little circle around that statement or group of statements. I want you to draw a line next to it. And what I'll do is I'll put an example here so you can see exactly what I mean. You've got your message, you've got your sense of your story that you've been allowing to hold you back. I want you to put a circle around it. I want you to do is put a line next to it. I want you to simply write, I am reconciling this seeming fragmentation to the truth of my inherent and unconditional perfection. I am reconciling this seeming fragmentation to the truth of my inherent and unconditional perfection. Because the truth is, even if you have some sort of disorder, even if you have ADHD, ADD, whatever the fuck it is, surrendering it to that sense of perfection in your body will, I can tell you this from experience, actually decrease the chemical responses that you are normally inclined to in relation to whatever that is, right? Not the end all solution, but this is going to be a very powerful thing for you. Every time you notice this story come up over the next 6 weeks, I want you to take out what you just wrote, and I'm going to have you look at it and then use the protocol we're going to be giving you in session 4. All right, let's get back into our presentation here. Good stuff. All right. Wherever I am, everything is perfect. There is no reason for any argument, for that body you will wear in the resurrection is a perfect body, and nothing is dead in your world. Nothing can be imperfect in your world. Everything is perfect wherever you are. That is the resurrection body, and that is spoken of in scripture as the kingdom of heaven. So the kingdom of heaven is not a place. It is not a realm. It is a body. And ultimately, wherever consciousness is, I am, there is perfection, because consciousness is all and consciousness is perfect. Understanding this, you naturally feel and manifest perfection, right? Perfection, perfection, perfection. Knowing that we are the perfect self, that we are not this limited body and mind fundamentally, all problems immediately resolve. Here's the thing. A problem, you can have problems resolve sort of on their own, and while you're still frustrated with them. But I'll give you a secret here. 99% of the time, if you can resolve a problem energetically in yourself, that will be the quickest way to resolve it in the world around you. Most of the time, the inner frustrations we have actually succeed in perpetuating the frustrations that we have, right? So again, the obligation is returning the sense of fragmentation to the zero density state. When you're identified with source, you know you are beyond all problems. Therefore, problems do not exist, not in the typical sense, right? Problems are creations and distortions of the mind that manifest into the world, right? Creations and distortions of the mind, most of the time rooted in a perception of separation, because wholeness and perfection manifests itself. Separation does the same exact thing. Ultimately, I would venture to tell you that the conception of separation is the root of all suffering. The belief that I am separate from the world around me, the belief that I am objectively real and separate from the objectively real world around me, is the root of all suffering. If God is all and God is perfect, everything must be perfect, and that leaves no place for imperfection or troubles. Lester Levinson. If you've not read Lester, I would highly encourage you to do so. Straight out of Sedona, good stuff. He has a really good book called Freedom for All. Actually, that's Neville, but I will send the name of his book. Doesn't he have a book, Dave, called How to Be Happy?
Yeah, that's a reprint of his earlier. That's done by the Sedona Method.
Okay. Well, regardless, we'll send you guys some links and you'll be able to check him out. But ultimately, the key takeaway here is that if God is everything, God's source, right, is everything, source is perfect, then everything must be perfect by nature. The mind just distorts this perfection. Ultimately, the prime and very first limitation is the feeling that I am an individual separate from the all. So funny how we say things and they show up on the next slide. Eliminate that and you eliminate all loneliness and all limitation. And I will tell you this, after, really accompanying and accustoming myself to the zero density state, right? I really begin to understand that in my aloneness, I am not lonely, right? And this is such a powerful transformation, because when you really begin to step into this perfection, this sense of connectedness with all that is, this sense of unity with all that is, the sense of understanding your root core being, you can be by yourself forever and not ever really be lonely, because everything around you is just as alive as you are. A lot of the times our loneliness is really about human connection. And here's the thing, I'm a big fan of human connection, huge fan of it, right? But there is also so much other life around us. If you just listen, you will hear. And truthfully, at this point, I've probably found more fullness in silence than I have with an abundance of activity. Key takeaway here being that the first limitation, the distortion that the mind creates, is feeling separate from the world, right? This is the only true cause of lack. The feeling of separation literally perpetuates itself. I am separate perpetuates I am separate, and I am separate creates more I am separate. And until I am one with, the union won't exist, the experience won't be here, and I'll be sitting here waiting for it to happen. We must let go of the ego sense, which is the original sense of our separation from the all, and allow our natural being to just be, and then everything will fall perfectly into line. There's an amazing song from Tiesto back from the late 90s, I think, early 2000s, called Just Be. Probably one of the first dance songs I was introduced to after my awakening, but the song is amazing, right? It says, you can travel the world, but you can't run away from the person you are in your heart. You can be who you want to be, make us believe in you, keep all your light in the dark. If you're searching for truth, you must look in the mirror and make sense of what you can see, just be. And then ultimately the song, it actually goes into, in the chorus, now I know I'm not so far, despite the fact that I feel so lost. It's just so easy to be. And as I'm being, everything works out. Everything is free. I am free. It goes in those tonalities. And I just get chills even thinking about the song, because that song was so definitive in my personal journey, and really understanding that just be. If you could just be in this perfection, right? That is it here, right? The zero density state. If you could just be, as Lester says here, everything will fall into line. By identifying solely with and surrendering to our true nature source, we hold only perfection in mind, and that is what manifests for us. Folks, It's not a joke. It's not a metaphor. It's a real thing here. And I know we're all getting here. We're all getting here, right? How can I begin to sit in the perfection that my life is now? What if I could sit in my perfection, understanding that as I sit in that perfection, everything perfect works itself out for me. Understanding that if I have desires that aren't mine, that come from source, and source is perfect, if I sit in perfection, I literally sit in the vibrational resonance of what it is that I want. And all of a sudden, you know, I look at vibrational frequencies as I imagine them as kind of like tethers, right? When you're on a vibrational frequency, there's an available set of notches for you, like there would be on a rope, right? And every vibrational frequency has its own set of notches. And most of the time, like a chord, like a guitar, right? We're moving from frequency to frequency, from note to note. And wow, that's amazing, because Neville actually talks about this in relation to the scales, right? Moving across states of consciousness is actually like moving across a fretboard or moving across a scale of notes, because each note carries its own resonance. It carries its own frequency. And ultimately, by identifying with and surrendering to source solely as perfection, we hold the perfection in mind. And that is what manifests. And folks, I cannot tell you how much the benefit that this has been for me. Even in situations that I'm like, eventually, okay, I might want this to change. Settling into that perfection has been one of the most amazing tools that I have used for myself, because it literally puts me into the place where this is the best my life has ever been. Right? Neville or Abraham, I think, says, you know, one of the things you can say is, can it get any better? Right? Or how can it get any better than this? And it's just so funny, because when you really sit in perfection, you naturally say those things, like you naturally go to those conclusions. Yeah, there's a reason it's called trance. Right, Vanessa? You just know that everything is perfect, and then the slightest thought you have will come into being. There is no limitation on God, on the self. Whatever you think will come into being if you let go, because you are invoking your infinite power, God yourself. Nothing can stop it. And my question for you is, how serious are you willing to take all this? Because you're either going to take this as like a metaphor, and it's like, well, maybe they mean that. Or you're going to take this and you're going to put it into action as quickly and as succinctly as you can. And if you do, I can guarantee you'll see exactly what's being talked about here. Ultimately, the key takeaway being that there's no limitation to God. So don't place any limitation on what is possible, right? How many of us have a desire and we start calculating how many ways we think that thing can come to pass, and how many avenues we think that thing should come to pass. And we say, well, it can come to pass like this. But it's like literally, do it myself, folks. That creates the limitation. Occupy the consciousness that everything is perfect, and your thoughts manifest quickly. High stakes games. There you go. That's what we're doing here. High stakes games. If you will accept that God is all, God is perfect, that is all there is, and look at perfection, that is all that you will ever meet with. Ultimately, holding in mind that God is everything, God is perfect. You cannot separate yourself from the God you are identifying. And when you look at the world and only see God, you only see source, you will only see and experience perfection. And it's so funny, because the Bible actually says this, but we've created a religion around believing that God is separate. But it literally says, in him, for him, through him were all things made that are made. How the fuck can God be separate from his fucking creation if in him, for him, and through him are all things made that are made? It's impossible. It's impossible. It's the mind that creates the separation. It's the mind, the ego, the separate being that says, did God really say? The adversary exists because the separation exists. And when the separation exists, the doubt exists. And you could replace adversary, you could rearrange adversary and separation there, right? What took Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden? It wasn't that Eve ate the fruit. I can promise you, eating an apple will do nothing unless it's really poisoned and you're eating a really poisoned, old, moldy apple. That'll do something, I promise. But I imagine the fruit was perfect there. The thing that got Adam and Eve kicked out of the garden was not the fact that she ate the apple. It's the fact that they entertained the concept. Did God really say? Did God really say you were infinite? Did God really say you could have everything? Did God really say that you were everything that is? Did God say you could have everything that you wanted? Did God say that you could do whatever you want? Did God say that you could be whatever you want? What happened the moment? See, here's the thing. It wasn't even the question. The question wasn't the sin. Entertaining the substance, the essence of the question, which was doubt, that literally, why wouldn't that kick them out of the Garden of Eden? God didn't do anything. They did to themselves because they were dumbasses like us. Because we sit here and we say, did God really say that I was perfect? Yeah. Who the hell are you to say that you're not? Did God really say I could have everything? Yeah. Who are you to say that you can't? All things are possible. You've got to hold and allow them to happen. Every impossible becomes possible when you are released. Why? Because there's nothing out there but your picture, right? So when he's talking about released, he's talking about the Sedona method, or what we now refer to as the Sedona method, ultimately the releasing process. Releasing process is very interesting. We've got something that is along those veins for you in session 4 today, but ultimately every impossible becomes possible. And I would probably paraphrase this and say, when you are released from your sense of limited identity. Every impossible becomes possible when you are released from your sense of limited identity. Why? Because there's nothing out there but your picture. What he means by your picture is your essence, and not your essence, but God's essence, because you are God. The only person holding yourself back here is you. There are not archons living in some hidden dimension of time and space, sucking on the soul blood of humanity. Sorry. It's a good story. Make a great blockbuster movie. Everything you give your power away to becomes the dictator of your power. And I think this is one of the reasons behind the spirit of don't create any idols. Because oftentimes putting our power in something limits us, as opposed to recognizing what we already are. Why would you create an idol that holds power when you are literally the most powerful thing that there is? The consciousness that you are literally is all that is. Eventually, we begin to realize that so many of our human traditions and routines are just, they're built out of literal ignorance of who we really are. Nothing but the contents of your consciousness outpicturing themselves in your world. Because of this, hold in mind that all things are possible, and then allow them to manifest on their own. Radical reliance on God is what does it. If someone tries to perform a miracle and it doesn't work for him, his knowledge is not complete. You must have the understanding, and you must get your little self out of the way. You must let go and let God, and it happens immediately, but you do not think of trying it out or testing it. You know it is, and you just let it be. And this is pure, unadulterated, unfiltered conviction. This is the naturalness that Neville speaks of when it comes to manifesting instantaneously. And I'll tell you what, you want to get to the naturalness around you get everything that you want, commit to the zero density state. Don't credit your body or your world for your accomplishments. Know that God or source is the force that manifests your desires into form, and source is the doer. Thinking itself to be you. People ask me, Lester, can you do miracles? I say, no, I can't. That's the truth. Yet there isn't anything I have not experienced by getting me, Lester, out of the way. By letting go of the sense of egoity, anything and everything can happen. There must be no sense of doership here, right? It's so amazing. We talked about this a little yesterday, you know, deep in my experiences in Christianity, when I would lay hands on somebody and see them healed, or I'd witness somebody else lay hands on somebody and see them healed, or I'd see a bunch of different manifestations, food appearing out of thin air, all these different things, feet growing out of stub legs, you name it. That this statement right here was it. There is not anything I have not experienced by getting me, Lester, out of the way, right? That's all we want to do here, is we want to get Michael out of the way. We want to get Dave out of the way. We want to get Catherine out of the way. We want to get John out of the way. We want to get Aaron out of the way. Letting go of the sense of personal responsibility that I have to make things happen as an individual. Source is the only doer, and what you hold in consciousness expresses automatically as ideas, actions, and manifestations. And the state in which all powers exist is the effortless state, whereas the ego, with its concept of limitation, requires effort. In omniscience, omnipotence, no effort is needed. If we are the all-powerful self, then no effort is needed. This is also true in the idea of letting go and letting God. When we let go of our little ego self, then we can let any miracle be, and it is instantly affected without effort by just letting go and letting it be. By letting go of the feeling of responsibility to manifest a desire, you allow it to manifest for you. And I will tell you, the longer you take responsibility for it, the longer it will take. Because there is no sense of doing, there is no sense of density, and manifestation is effortless when you give up the responsibility to make it happen. When you lose the sense of doership, that's called surrender, right? Let's maybe put this in another context. Maybe you've gotten to a point where you were frustrated and you said, you know what, I'm just not going to be frustrated about this anymore. And boom, whatever you need to happen happens within a couple hours, right? When you surrender, you're stepping away from your ego sense and you're letting go of your ego sense totally, and you're into your beingness, right? Surrendering to your desires is the act of knowing it is the responsibility of source to manifest them. This is why Abraham uses the term co-creators. And I think that's actually really helpful. You know all is perfect and manifests effortlessly and automatically through you. End of story. Your desires don't flow to you, they flow through you. And the degree in which you are blocking up the stream is the same degree in which you will ultimately take in perception of time to experience the desire. But hopefully over the last 3 sessions, we've spent a lot of time helping you understand why the zero density state is the only thing you really need. Why it's the only place that makes sense for you to live in. So ultimately, analyzing this master consciousness, the universe, including space and time, are not solidly real. They're composed of consciousness. Consciousness is infinite. My true nature is consciousness. Therefore, I am infinite. Everything is within me, consciousness. Therefore, I am everything. Therefore, I have everything, right? Not Michael, consciousness. Source is all and source is perfect. So by looking through the eyes of source, I manifest perfection, right? Holding consciousness of perfection. And anything can happen by simply letting it happen, letting it be perfect with no sense of doership, surrendering to source. This is the zero density state because it is identified with realm 1, which is prior to manifestation and therefore carries no density. Where there is no density, there is effortlessness. And this is the state where all desires manifest automatically. And in session 4, we're going to learn to embody it. And I don't want you to worry if it feels like a lot. The technology we give you in session 4 is designed to activate the zero density state in you. Ultimately, session 3 is wrapping up here. We're right on time. 11:54, session 4, folks, it's coming through. We are going to be rocking it. I would very much encourage all of you to bring headphones to session 4 because we are going to be taking you through the zero density activation. And this is going to be a meditation that we have guided and ultimately cultivated that is full of the frequencies of your dreams. We've really probably, I mean, honestly, this is like one of the best activations we've ever produced. So Make sure to bring your headphones. You won't have to wear them the whole time, just wear them during that moment. And then ultimately you will get a copy of this meditation after session 4 today. And we will be off to the races. So I'm going to stick around here for about 5 more minutes, answer any questions, any feedback. Otherwise, you are free to go to lunch, be back here in literally 60 minutes from now, so that we can start right at 1 o'clock Mountain Time, 12 p.m. Pacific, and get this thing rolled out. I'm so excited to finish this up with you. We're at the finish line, folks, even though it technically doesn't exist. So I hope you have an amazing lunch. I'm going to hang out here for a couple minutes, and we will see you guys here in about an hour. Yes, session 4 is going to be where we do the actual activation of the zero density state. So that's why we advise everybody to bring headphones. Joe, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Let me turn this.
Just a quick question. Maybe it'd be more appropriate afterwards. I'm just a little confused that after today's session with the SMS things, and I'm not sure, because when I first clicked on the link, it wanted me to download some type of a text messaging app, and then the second time it wanted me to sign into Google for something. I'm not quite clear on how we're going to stay in communication over the next 6 weeks, and I didn't know, maybe you'd explain that more later, or maybe I just missed something in the literature.
Absolutely. So did you get a chance to join the Telegram group?
Is that like an app you download? Because
Yeah.
the second time I clicked on the link, it wanted me to sign into something with Google.
Yeah, most likely. Dave, can you expand on this for me?
Yeah, I'm guessing that's what, Joe, you're referring to is Telegram. So that's our chat community. So we will be using that for the next 6 months to provide support, to have,
6
conversations and et cetera. And 6 weeks, not 6 months, 6 weeks. And text messages will also start tomorrow. And so
Those are going to be on an app or through Google something?
those will be directly to your cell phone. But
Or that'll just be my cell phone number. You're just going to go through the regular text messaging thing, because there was
Right.
some text messaging app it wanted me to download, and I wasn't sure what that was about.
Yeah, so that's for the community. Telegram is for the community.
Oh,
And the text messaging are independent. So you're going to get access to the community with our support, but the text messages are going to go directly to your phone.
so how do I get, I'm
Here,
sorry,
let
I'm
me
just a
share it
little
in the chat
confused.
here. Let me share it in the chat.
Yeah, because it was, thank you. I
There you
don't
go.
want to take up your time here now. We can figure it out later. It was just quick.
No, it's all good. Oh, let me